Hi everyone, this is Rabbi Rachel Davidson. I'm part of the Lionsgate staff, and I work with Rabbi Raina Grossman providing rabbinic services to the community. I wanted to bring you all a little class today about what it means to be created B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. So this is a phrase that appears in Genesis, in the book of Bereshit, in the Torah, and then it's explored actively in later sources like Midrashim and later commentaries. So we together will explore both those earliest Tanakh texts and the later commentaries on those. And by looking at this, I think this is an interesting opportunity to explore both what people from the Jewish tradition have thought it means to be human, what does it mean to be a human being, and what can this phrase tell us about God? If human beings are created in the image of God, what can we learn about divinity? So that's a bit about what we'll be exploring today. I wanted to start us off, though, with the blessing for Torah study, which you're welcome to say along with me. It's the regular blessing like the one we use for lighting candles, but instead of saying L'hadlik ner shel Shabbat, we'll say La'asok b'divrei Torah. So, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So we'll begin by looking at those original sources from the Tanakh that use the phrase B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. So in Bereshit chapter 1, verse 26 through 27, it says, Vayomer Elohim na'aseh Adam b'tzalmenu kidmutenu, v'yirdu v'degat hayam uve'of hashamayim uve'behema uve'chol ha'aretz uve'chol haremes haromes al ha'aretz. V'yivra Elohim et ha'adam b'tzalmo b'tzelem Elohim bara oto, zachar u'nekeva bara otam. And God said, Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. The human shall rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, the cattle, the whole earth, and all creeping things that creep on the earth. And God created man in his image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. Now in this translation, Adam, right? Adam HaRishon, the first human. Adam is translated as man. I generally actually prefer the term human being. The term that's used later on, zachar, is what I would translate as male or man, or ish I would translate as man. But Adam, I think, refers really to this shared human trait. So I often will say human or human being. So that's the first source text we have, and that's the original one where God says, let us make man in our image, in our likeness. And then we learn that God does create the human being in God's image and in God's likeness, and then God creates them male and female. Now, this verse has been the impetus for probably thousands of midrashim, of commentaries, creative interpretations. We're only going to look at one line of interpretation today. But just know, pretty much every word in those verses spawned a midrash. So then the next one that we'll look at is from Genesis 9:6. And I unfortunately don't have the Hebrew here with me, but it reads, Whoever sheds a man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God made he man. So this references that original text and says, oh yeah, remember how human beings are created B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God? From that you can know that if you do violence to another human being, it's very bad. So some of our midrashim will focus on that as well. And just so you know, these two words, B'Tselem means in the image, Tselem is image, and Elohim is God. We see that in our liturgy. So the first line of interpretation that I wanted to bring you is from Masachet Sota, the tractate Sota from the Talmud. So the Talmud is written between 220 CE and 600 CE, roughly. So that's when this is being written down. And the rabbi we're looking at is going to look at a different verse, and then from there he's going to move towards this idea of being created b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. So, and Rabbi Chama, the son of Rabbi Hanina, said, "What is the meaning of the verse? After Hashem your God you shall walk." That's Deuteronomy 13:5. So in this verse, it says, you shall walk after God. And he's saying, what does it mean to walk after God? How is that possible? Does God walk? Is there a path we should be on? What does this mean? So he responds, is it possible for a man to walk after the divine presence? And isn't it already stated, for Hashem your God is a consuming fire? So he's saying, if you walked after God, you would be consumed in fire. That's crazy. So it can't be telling us you're physically walking in God's presence. That doesn't make any sense. So then he supplies what he thinks the real answer is for what it means to walk after God. Rather, to follow the character traits of God. Just as God clothes the naked, as it is written, and the Lord God made for Adam and his wife cloaks of leather, and he clothed them, so too shall you clothe the naked. The Holy One, blessed be he, visited the sick, as it is written, and he appeared in Elonei Mamre while Avraham was in pain. So too shall you visit the sick. The Holy One, blessed be he, comforted mourners, as it is written, and it was after the death of Abraham, and God blessed his son Isaac. So too shall you comfort mourners. The Holy One, blessed be he, buried the dead, as it is written, and he buried him in the valley. So too shall you bury the dead. So this Rabbi Chama, the son of Rabbi Hanina, is saying that what does it mean to be godly, to be like God? And his answer is that it means to really take care of other people, right? And he says it really comes down to a few things. Clothe the naked, visit the sick, comfort mourners, and bury the dead. And later rabbis will often add into that, bring joy to a bride. That's also something they find very important. But so for him, what he's saying is what it means to be created in the image of God is that it means we're taking care of our fellow human beings, just as God takes care of us. So then, if we move into another interpretation, also from the Talmud, this one is from Masechet Sanhedrin, Tractate Sanhedrin, and it's going to talk about a little bit, it's going to use that second Tanakh verse we used that talked about what it means to spill the blood of another human being. And it's going to reflect on what does it mean for all of us to have descended from Adam HaRishon, the first human being, Adam. So, I'll read the Hebrew and then I'll read the English for all of you. לפיכך נברא אדם יחידי, לעומתך שכל המאבד נפש אחת מישראל, מעלה עליו, הכתוב כאילו עבד עולם מלא. וכל המקיים נפש אחת מישראל, מעלה עליו, הכתוב כאילו קיים עולם מלא. ומפני שלום הבריאות, שלא יאמר אדם לחברו, אבא גדול מאביכך. ולהגיד גדולתו של הקדוש ברוך הוא. שאדם טובה כמה מטובות, בחותם אחד כולן דומין זה לזה. ומלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, טבע כל האדם בחומתו של אדם הראשון, ואין אחד מהן דומה לחברו. לפיכך כל אחד ואחד חייב לומר, בשבילי נברא העולם. So, therefore, the first human being, Adam, was created alone. So they're answering this question. They're going to start with, why was the first human being created alone? Why was there just one Adam, right? God could have brought thousands of people into the world at the same time, and animals seem to come into existence in that way in Genesis, right? You know, the beasts that wander the earth, the fish, the birds. It's like all of a sudden birds are there, not one bird. But for human beings, we get one Adam Harishon, one first Adam. So why only one? So they're answering that. Therefore, the first human being, Adam, was created alone to teach us that whoever destroys a single life, the Torah considers it as if he destroyed an entire world. And whoever saves a single life, the Torah considers it as if he saved an entire world. So they're saying that when we as human beings look at Adam and say, oh, all of us on this planet descended from Adam, that means that from any human being could descend an entire world, right? So if you kill one human being, you're killing the potential for an entire world. And if you save one human being, you're saving the potential for an entire world. Now, they keep going. Furthermore, only one person, Adam, was created for the sake of peace among men, so that no one should say to his fellow, my father was greater than yours. So in this next part, they're teaching us a little bit of humility. They're saying, why did we all descend from one person? It's so that none of us can say, my father is better, I come from a better lineage than you. None of us can be so obsessed with status that we deny the fact that we're all descended from one common human being. Now, of course, this seems like a good moment to add in. I personally, of course, believe in evolution. I believe we are descended from many human beings. And I think that as human beings, we all share a spark of humanity that I think is unique to human beings and is universal, right? A universal common humanity. And so while I may not literally believe we all descended from Adam, I believe we spiritually all share something. And I think this is getting at that spiritual truth. So the Midrash concludes, also, man was created singly to show the greatness of the Holy One, blessed be he. For if a man strikes many coins from one mold, they all resemble one another. But the King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be he, made each man in the image of Adam, and yet not one of them resembles his fellow. So here they say that this should also teach us humility about the difference between human beings and God. That while human beings are able to create beautiful, wonderful things, when we create something, it's very limited, right? And they use the example of a stamp, that a human king is going to make coins from one mold, right? And every coin is going to look exactly the same. But God had one mold, which was Adam Harishon, and yet every human being looks different. There's great diversity amongst us. And that diversity shows God's power. So I personally think that's a beautiful message that the Midrash concludes with, saying that human beings in our diversity, in all of the ways that we're different, show how powerful and how mighty God is. And I think that also starts to get at the way that B'Tselem Elohim not only tells us things about what a human being is and how a human being should act, but also we're starting to move now into sources that are looking at what can this tell us about God, right? So if we look around at human beings and we say human beings are all so different, we can learn from that God is very powerful and incredible at creating things. So I want to turn now to a passage from Avot de Rabbi Natan, which is commentary on Pirkei Avot. It's one of the latest Talmudic texts, just like Pirkei Avot is sort of post-Mishnah, pre-Talmud. The commentary on Pirkei Avot is at the very end of the Talmud. And so it's going to deal with a lot of ethical actions, that kind of thing. So this is going to tell a story about Rabbi Hillel. So if you've heard of Hillel and Shammai, they were a great zug, a great pair who were often in conflict with each other. But this one is just about Rabbi Hillel, who was a great sage, a rabbi who lived around 0 CE. So this is written much later, but it's about him. So they say, and all your actions should be for the sake of heaven, like Hillel. When Hillel left for a place, they would ask him, where are you going? I am going to do a mitzvah, he would say. And they would say to him, what is the mitzvah? He would say, I am going to the bathroom. And they would respond, and is this a mitzvah? Is going to the bathroom a mitzvah? Yes, so that the body is not damaged, right? So he says even this most base thing that we have to do is a mitzvah because taking care of our bodies is a mitzvah. They add another story. Or, I am going to the bathhouse. And then his students would say to him, and is this a mitzvah? And he would say, yes, in order to clean the body. Know that if someone is appointed to polish and clean the statues of kings, they are paid every year and are also respected among the great kings. So we, who are created in the image of God, how much the more so. So Hillel here is saying that if we look at the earthly realm, right, it's a really important thing to polish the statue of a king in his day and age. In our day and age, we don't have statues of kings, but we do have other things where we say it's really important to clean and keep this beautiful. Perhaps a synagogue, right? It's a really important role to vacuum the synagogue, to clean up after Kiddush. Those things are vital for keeping a holy space. And we created those things. Now with the human body, that in some ways is like a statue of a king, right? It's created in the image of God. So if our bodies are in the image of God, how much more so important must it be to take care of our bodies, to clean them and keep them in good health? So I want to turn from there to a very related modern piece of commentary that uses modern academic biblical criticism. So the author is Rabbi Lawrence Troster, who was a rabbi in Westchester, PA, very involved with the environmental movement, a lovely man who I had the good fortune to meet, who passed away just a few years ago. So he says, he discusses the word tselem, right, which we translate as in the image of. The Hebrew term for image, tselem, has a cognate word in Old Akkadian and Old Babylonian that throws significant light upon the original nuance of the term used in Genesis. So he's looking, ancient Hebrew is very related to ancient Akkadian and Old Babylonian. So he's looking at these other languages to say, can we learn a little bit about what connotations this word had, what it really meant to them? The cognate word salmu, salmu, can mean a statue, a bodily shape, a figurine, or a relief drawing. So you'll notice that Hillel, even though he didn't speak Old Akkadian or Babylonian, he was actually getting at a very similar concept, right? He was saying the human body is like a statue of a king. And in fact, tselem was related to the word for statue or figurine. The term sometimes refers to a statue or an image of a king, which is placed in a captured city or elsewhere in the kingdom as an extension of the king's presence and the king's law. In other words, it is as if the king were present wherever the king's tsalmu is placed. The king rules wherever his tsalmu stands. Seen in this light, humanity is the tsalmu of God. Wherever humans are, the presence of God is reflected. This cannot be said of any other creature. Indeed, the command to multiply and spread over the earth is none other than a desire to spread the presence of God and to actualize God's power throughout creation, rather than a desire for mere numerical increase. It is as if God could not function in the world without humanity. This is certainly in accord with the rabbinic idea of human beings as partners of God in the work of creation. So Rabbi Trester, Zichrono Livracha, is saying that human beings are in some ways an avatar for God's presence. We're a symbol of how God's presence moves through the world. And we can show each other what it means for God to be present. So when we show love, when we show care, we are acting as a symbol, a metaphor, something like that for God's presence. So I want to just bring you two more last sources about what being created B'Tselem Elohim can tell us about God. So the first one is from The Guide to the Perplexed, which is Moreh Nevuchim, which is a great source by Maimonides, the Rambam, a medieval author. So he says, some have been of the opinion that the Hebrew tselem, the shape and figure of a thing, is to be understood as corporality, that it implies that God had the form of a human being, that he had figure and shape, and that consequently he was corporeal. He goes on to say, the sole difference which they admitted was that God excelled, in greatness and splendor, and that God's substance was not flesh and blood. And Maimonides goes on to say that this is in fact, this idea that God, when we say we're created in the image of God, it means that God looks like a human being. Maimonides goes on to say that that, in fact, is heresy of the highest form. Maimonides is very clear that God has no body, has no physical image that we could look at or touch. This is very important to him. If you've sung the song Yigdal, it's based on Maimonides' 13 core principles, and in it it says about God, Ein demut haguf, God doesn't have the likeness of a body. So while we might be made in God's likeness, God is not really in our likeness. Something I found that I think is very helpful for understanding this is from a Kabbalist named Joseph Abraham Gikatilla from the 14th century, so just a little bit later than Maimonides. And what he says is that there is no structural or essential similarity between us mortals and God in the Torah. The reason for the usage of human form is to create signposts for memory. So what he goes on to say is that we shouldn't assume that just because we have hands, God has hands, and because we have eyes, God has eyes. These things, these parts of our body, are signposts for memory. So when we look at our hands and how they can build and create, they remind us of how God builds and creates. And when we look at our eyes and we notice how they can see things in the world, we're reminded of how God observes and keeps track of things in the world. So I think this is a very beautiful thing to think about, in fact, that our bodies and the way our bodies move through the world can teach us something about God. Now, in fact, our bodies are quite frail, right? I think there's two ways of thinking about human frailty and how it reflects on God. One is that you could say, we're frail, but God is not. This is just part of being mortal, right? God is perfect. Human beings are frail. There is no comparison. And I think I would say that's probably what Maimonides would say. I feel confident telling you that. I think another answer is that we could say that we are in some way broken, and we live in a broken reality, and God is maybe with us in that brokenness. And that's actually the approach that the Kabbalists would take, right? They would say that our world is truly a complicated, messy, difficult, painful place. And God is with us in that pain and suffering in some way or another. So I'll leave you with one last teaching. This is from one of my teachers, Rabbi Joshua Kulp at the Conservative Yeshiva in Jerusalem. And he said this kind of as an offhand passing comment, and I found it extremely profound. So he said, what does it mean for God to have a body, right? He would say, obviously, God does not have a body that looks like human beings. He said that instead, the fullness of the universe and that which transcends it is God's body. So you and me and the books on my bookshelf and the tree outside my window and this desk right next to me, all of this are constituent parts of God's body. And to me, I think this actually gets at that question of brokenness, right? If our world is deeply, deeply messed up in various ways, I believe that all of that is part of the wholeness of God. So I think it's clear to all of us that we're living in a pretty difficult time right now, where the difficulty of human existence is very clear, when sorrow and pain and illness and suffering are right in front of us. We're in the midst of a pandemic, and in our own personal lives, there's always difficulties above and beyond the crisis around us. And so I hope that these sources can help you think about both how to respect and love your body and take good care of your body, and help you know that even when things are difficult, God is here with us, and we are part of the wholeness of God. So I hope you all have a good day, and I'll record another one of these videos for you soon.